that someone is eligible as an in-school youth. Out of school has similar but different criteria. First of all, they have to be not attending school, which we look at from the educational status and the registration. The age range is 16 to 24, and they have to be one or more of these following categories. They have to be a school dropout, or they have to have a high school diploma or be at a higher educational level and be low income and be basic skills deficient or an English language learner. Or they have to be one of these great. They have to be one of these categories as far as one of these barriers, or they have to be low income and require some sort of additional assistance. So the out-of-school youth table 6 is maybe a little bit more complicated and involved, but hopefully it'll also give you some guidance, direction on how to work through the eligibility criteria for the out-of-school youth as well. As I said, OSMIS is going to enforce these eligibility requirements. So as you're registering someone and you select whether they're in-school youth or out-of-school youth based on these criteria, as you put in the additional information about assistance and barriers, if it turns out that they're not eligible, you're going to get the similar type of error message, warning message that you get right now that says, based on the data that you've entered, this person is not eligible as an in-school youth, for instance. And if you hit confirm, the system will inactivate that person, inactivate that record as being not eligible for the program. Yes, question? Have those been removed? Local barriers. Okay, so for youth, no, they're no longer applicable for WIOA. The question is basic skills deficient allowed for someone who has a high school diploma? Krista, I might defer to you for further information on that. So someone can be considered basic skills deficient even if they have a high school diploma, right? Because I know our system will allow you to have somebody who has a high school diploma or higher and still be basic skills deficient. I wasn't sure if the regulations allowed that. One thing I wanted you to note, yeah. Correct. Yep. One note about the youth who are carryover WIOA. If they're older or younger youth from their WIA registration, they will remain in OSMIS as an older youth or a younger youth, even though they might be carried over into WIOA. Now, when it comes time for reporting performance under WIOA, if it is under WIOA. Again, remember that youth performance just has the one category. We don't do in school, we don't do out of school, even though as a state we might calculate that. From the federal perspective right now, it's just youth performance. So in OSMIS, you're going to continue to see that person as a younger youth or an older youth, even if they're being served under WIOA. There might be some confusion as a result of that. But the program, once they're assigned to a program in OSMIS, they're going to continue to be in that program. Even if they get carried over into WIOA. Yes. The question is, if a person has a certificate of completion instead of a high school diploma or GED, are they considered to be a high school graduate? And it's my understanding they are not. I'll confirm that with Krista. So no, they are not. It's not the equivalent. So are they considered a dropout? But for out of school, we have someone who's a high school graduate or someone not attending or a dropout. So it would just be not attending or dropout. The category for school status has been changed slightly. It's now not attending or dropout. So I think your person would fall within that category. And we had a question right up here. Comment was under no child left behind. It was determined that things thrown at me. It was determined that the certificate of completion is not equivalent to the high school diploma, so it does not qualify as the same. Is there one other question back here? Yeah. So the question is, if the youth who started under WIA is carried over into WIOA, and their characteristics at registration would have considered them to be an out-of-school youth, will they still be considered to be out of school? And the answer is yes. You're still going to see the program, though, as younger youth or older youth. So maybe in this case it was an older youth whose characteristics would have defined them as out of school. Yes, they'll still consider to be out of school, even though the program that you're going to see them under in OSMIS will remain older youth. We're going to have to do some calculations when we're determining, what percentage you're serving as out of school youth. We're going to have to take those characteristics into consideration when we calculate that. Yep. So someone who's attending adult education, for instance, working toward their GED, is that considered to be in school or out of school? And I really don't have an answer. I think that was one of the categories that they requested comments on under the proposed rulemaking, and I don't know what sort of decision they're going to make on that. Yep. Well, he would be not attending. So if they're not attending and they're 23 years old and they meet one of these other criteria, then yes, you could serve them as an out-of-school youth. Yep. You wouldn't. A GED would count as equivalent to a high school diploma. The earlier comment was a certificate of completion, which is not the same as the GED. Okay. You could, right, as long as they're low income and either basic skills deficient or an English language learner, they would qualify under that second category. Well, let me ask, if someone dropped out of school in 9th grade and then later went back and got their GED, are they considered a dropout? Yeah. I think, you know, for this type of thing, what would Department of Education say? Would they say to the person? Okay, so in that case, you would not be a dropout. So in Al's scenario where this person's 23, they have a GED, well, they got it well after because they dropped out in 9th grade. Well, maybe Krista has a comment. Okay. Thank you. That helps. So that person would not be a dropout, but they could qualify under the second one we were talking about, Al, where they've attained a high school diploma or its equivalent, and they're low income, and they're basic skills deficient or an English language learner. Okay? Or any of the other ones would qualify them as well. Okay, we're going to move on because I think question in the back. Can you repeat it? I'm not sure I heard the whole thing. Didn't want to get too much into this. I think the question is there a time frame where they when they can or cannot be considered a dropout? I think in Michigan, if they're younger than 18, technically they can't be considered a dropout. They're just someone who's not attending. But once they're 18 or older, they can be considered a dropout if they're no longer going to school. Krista, is that a correct way to put it? Is there a time frame or age that someone would be considered a dropout or not a dropout technically? And I thought that in Michigan, if you're younger than 18, you can't technically be a dropout. You're just someone who's not attending school. And only after you're 18 or older are you truly classified as a dropout. Okay. Does that answer your question? No. Isn't it for the previous semester? Okay. I think it sounds like there's a lot of definitions that we certainly want to include in our manual or our update to our PMIG. Don't know if they're all going to be there July 1st, but we're going to try and get the best information we can as we move forward. But we do want to continue here because we've got a number of things to talk about. For youth, many of the screens that Paula already showed you for adults and dislocated worker have also been updated. On the registration page, you're going to find a couple of new fields under the assistance tab. There's new areas for high poverty area or free or reduced lunch. Don't want to get into the definitions of these, but again, these are the new fields, and like Bernice asked with adults and dislocated workers, as far as what you have to collect for data validation. At this point, our suggestion is collect the best, I guess, confirmation of these as you can, because we don't really know for sure what's going to be subject to data validation as we move forward. The registration is broken up into the different tabs, like you saw for adults and dislocated workers. Yes. That's another one I can't answer. So the applicant themselves isn't in school, they're not receiving free or reduced lunch, but somebody in the family is. Does that qualify as being yes for free or reduced lunch? So it sounds like it has to be the individual who's receiving it, not just the family who's eligible or receiving it. Yeah, and we're getting kind of bogged down. Although, Krista, I am glad that you're here. I'm glad you're here to help answer the questions.